morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Beyond the Tech. Again, my name is Vic Miles, and thank you for the repeat viewers for being here with us. And today I have with me another fascinating thought leader in the retail industry space that we're going to get to hear from. I'll start by sort of letting the audience know that this will be a bit of a different format, and so please do give us feedback in the comments about whether you like this format. It's going to be a bit more free flowing, and we'll try to unpack some of the ideas. Some of these things, as we talk to thought leaders, you can't really encapsulate them into nice packages, and so we should have fun with this one today. And I'll start by saying that less than 10 months ago, we had this notion of agentic AI and how it might change the way that businesses work. Since that time, about last October or so, the conversations I'm having with retail clients across the world are really expansive around having agents as employees, digital employees, right? And there's this notion that in the future, individuals, people, humans may not shop and interact with retail brands, but their agent might interact with the retail agent. And if you're new to that concept, this will be a great discussion for you as we think about how to interact with retail platforms in a new AI-centric world. We will, of course, still have humans in the loop. Agents are intended to free up humans to have more human-to-human interaction and less human-to-keyboard or machine interaction. And the value that's derived is largely from the work streams that those agents will participate in. And as I sort of unpack that with thought leaders who are thinking practically about work streams in retail, I being a practitioner and like to see things that can be implemented, not just art of the possible. One person that stands out is someone who has both a historical track record of successful innovation and a current initiative that he's still driving in the industry is Mr. Dan Wagner. So I've asked him to join us today. Dan is a tech entrepreneur and founder, CEO, and chairman of Rezolve Ai. It's a retail-focused conversational AI platform launched in 2016. And rather than try to do the rest of Dan's background, I might ask him to intro himself to the audience. So Dan, welcome to Beyond the Tech.
Thank you very much, Vic, and it's great to be here. I very much appreciate being invited. So as you say, I've been around, for many decades, plugging away at trying to improve the digital retail experience. And my journey as an entrepreneur started in 1984. Probably many of your viewers weren't born back then. 1984, I started the first commercial online information platform where I licensed the various newspapers, who in those days weren't even using word processing, and we retyped their content, their newspaper content, into a mainframe computer and then made it available for people to interrogate, assuming they had a computer to do it, and nobody had computers then either. So it really was at the very sort of frontier of the digital revolution. And as a result, obviously, of starting that company, and that company went on to become the world leader in online information. It was listed on the London stock market and on NASDAQ before I sold it to Reuters in 2000. We ended up basically providing news and information and patent searches and intellectual property and chemicals, aerospace engineering, very broad base of data to a broad base of customers around the world. And obviously, in order to do that, we had to build our own commerce technologies, because there wasn't any commerce technologies that you could license in 1984, nor was there any search technologies that you could license or utilize. And we had to build our own data centers too, because unfortunately, Microsoft Azure was not available to us to use back then. So we built our own data centers, we built our own search technology, and we built our own commerce technology, and became quite sophisticated in those areas, as you would expect, in serving customers in 192 countries, many, many thousands of companies. So The second and third company I set up were both following that trajectory. So I created a company called Vendor in 1998, and it was a cloud-based commerce platform. I hope many of your listeners, viewers will have used it because it became European market leader, and we ran many of the high street retailers across Europe. In the US, we ran the sites for Neiman Marcus, Land's End, TJX companies, Under Armour, J. Crew, LL Bean, and other mid-market retailers like that. Before I sold that business in 2014 to Oracle, and now it's Oracle Commerce Cloud, which again, I would imagine some of your listeners or viewers are using. So that was a cloud commerce stack. And then I also set up a company called Attract, which was a search company for e-commerce, search and merchandising, making recommendations, allowing customers to interact with digital platforms, using search and intelligent ways to retrieve products that they might have been interested in. And so you can see how, these tenets of my career led me to setting up Rezolve in 2016, because, I kind of got to the point that I felt, and I still feel, that the e-commerce platforms and interfaces that we use today are coming to the end of life if they're not already end of life. So why do I think they're end of life? I think they're end of life because we all know 70% of people who arrive at digital platforms don't buy anything. And we also know that 70% of people that walk into physical stores do buy things. So this 100% disconnect between digital platforms and physical platforms, there are reasons for that. And I believe that the main reason is that you don't get the answers to the questions that you want online, but you can in the store. So I'll give you an example. If my wife was asked to buy me a mobile phone, she could not do it online. And the reason she couldn't do it online is because she doesn't know what iOS is, and she doesn't know what Android is. She doesn't know what a megapixel is, and she doesn't know what a megabyte is, and she doesn't know what an OLED screen is, and probably many other things. So if she was faced with various mobile phones and their specifications on a digital platform, she just wouldn't know where to go. But if she walked into the AT&T store on 34th Street and Lexington Avenue and said, I need to buy my husband a mobile phone, the salesperson in that store would likely ask her one or two questions. He'd say something like, does your husband use a PC or a Mac? Does your husband, use his phone all through the day? Does he need a lot of battery life? Does he take lots of pictures? A couple of questions like that. And that would direct, and how much did he want to spend? Did he want top of the range or, mid-range? A couple of questions like that. And you would end up with a few phones being presented to my wife, and she'd end up buying a phone. So we wanted to set up a solution to the attrition of 70% of people who arrive at digital platforms. And in order to do that, I believe that you need the best salesman on the planet in your digital store. And the best salesman on the planet can be created now using generative AI. So we set about trying to build that back in 2016, right at the forefront, again, of this new technology revolution. And what we did is we created a large language model, we call it Brain Power, that is purely trained to be a salesperson. And in order to be a salesman, you have three key capabilities: empathy, the ability to engage with somebody that you're talking to or interacting with sensitively. The second thing is sales ability, the ability to take somebody from a query to a purchase, and holding their hand through that journey and taking them to the point where they place an order. And the third thing, of course, is deep product knowledge and domain expertise. So that when I ask a question about, I'm interested in this camera or this camera, and the salesperson, digital or physical, would say to me, what sort of photography are you into? I'm into landscape photography. Well, then this camera's the better camera because it's got a better depth of field. No, I'm into sports photography. Well, this is the better camera. It's got a faster shutter speed. It's got an electric motor drive. Those questions that help direct you to the right product, You don't get those online today.
Not at all.
So what we've done, so that's what we've done at Rezolve. We've created this fantastic product, this a capability to converse using voice or type, but you can use voice, which I think is the future of all engagements, and interact with the best salesman. And that best salesman is trained better than you would train a salesman in the physical store, because that we can train that salesperson on the designers of the products. We can, it's up to the retailer to tell us, who the buyer was for this year's collection, or who the designer was for this year's clothing, or whatever it happens to be. And we get the data from these people. So it's from the horse's mouth. So that interaction is going to be probably richer than you would get in the store. And then I think finally, of course, we can do it in 96 languages. So you can speak in Chinese to Macy's and Arabic to Target. I mean, whatever the natural language is that the consumer uses. So I think it's a kind of revolution. It's not an evolution. It is a revolution, because it's a very dramatic change from what people are doing today to how they will interact with what I believe the new digital interfaces of the future.
So I think already, Dan, thank you for that. Already the audience can see why I wanted them to hear from you. I mean, you've got a storied career. The depth of experience, right, is why, again, I wanted the audience to hear from you. And thinking about your tenure, I'm immediately reminded that today is my parents' 65th wedding anniversary. And so I want to do a shout out to mom and dad, if you don't mind. Yes, exactly. Let's talk about a storied career. And so in this platform, Dan, you and I both work in the tech field. We met out in market, meeting with brands, understanding what their challenges are, that sort of thing. I like to try to get, as the name implies, beyond the tech, right, and understand what is it that shapes your vision. And so perhaps you can unpack for us a defining moment. When was it that you decided that retail transformation would be the thing that you would focus on? And I don't know if or you could take that question wherever you like.
Look, I mean, I think what it is, Vic, I'm not a programmer. I'm not a technician as such. I mean, I've obviously been in the tech space for long enough to learn enough to make me slightly dangerous when dealing with my IT departments and technical people, because I have an understanding of tech at that sort of superficial level. But what it is that really drives me is, I'm always itching to find things to improve what's out there. And my career has really been about, I think, identifying market opportunities or market trends ahead of their mass market adoption. So with my first company, Dialogue Information Services, we started digitizing newspapers and trade journals and stuff that allow people to interrogate them a long time before it became very sort of natural to do that. And then with my e-commerce business and the search business, we were deploying cloud-based commerce platforms before on-demand and SaaS, and became terms. They weren't terms in those days. We called it a multi-tenanted architecture and things like that. Yeah.
Can you talk to us, Dan, about that lead time? Sorry to interrupt you. The lead time between, you said you want to bring technology or transformation, innovation ahead of the market. Now, today with agents and digital in the cloud and AI, that time frame has shortened dramatically, right? How have you had to sort of catch up?
So let's talk about Rezolve for a second, because that really does exemplify much of what I was just trying to describe, which is that, I was frustrated by the 70% attrition in e-commerce. And I'm trying to say, well, why is it? Because this has not been something that I realized was a problem. This is something that every e-commerce director, every marketing director, every sales manager, chief revenue officer of any retailer knows all about, because their e-commerce sites do not perform. They perform a lot in terms of volume, but they don't perform as well in terms of conversion. Why is that, right? So they're all trying to improve the checkout flow and, better SEO and all sorts of things to improve that. But it really hasn't moved a lot in all these years. And so I'm thinking, how can we solve that? And what is the problem? And the fact that we're using Gen AI was not the starting point. The starting point was, how do we solve the problem of checkout attrition? How do we solve cart abandonment? How do we solve the problem of converting better on e-commerce? And it just so happened that Gen AI and the ability to have conversations with digital environments, or what you believe to be conversations, right? It's not technically a conversation. You're talking to a mathematical algorithm, but the idea that you're having a conversation with a computer kind of gave me the opportunity to evaluate a new way of doing things. And so when we started, it wasn't all about AI, because in 2016, nobody even understood what AI was, or they weren't talking about it unless you're in the very sophisticated sort of academic community and in, sort of in that pioneering area of technology development. So it wasn't something that we were pushing forward. It wasn't something I was telling my investors like you do today. It was simply, we're trying to solve the problem of checkout attrition. And I would say to you, Vic, today, if you said to me, what are you doing? We're trying to solve the problem of checkout attrition. It doesn't matter that we're using AI. It just so happens that AI is a very attractive area for investors. And we're a public company on NASDAQ. So obviously, we should be making sure people know that we own our own AI language models, that we own our own patents in AI and so on, because we are advanced, because we've been around nearly 10 years developing this, which is a lot longer than many of the new players that have sprung up recently. And as a result, we not only have that nearly 10 years, but we also have a huge amount of experience in commerce and search and data architecture and everything else that we brought to this proposition that has given us the ability to, I believe, approach it in a much more intelligent, sophisticated, and capable way that results in, we believe, a far better set of products and services for our retailers. But really, fundamentally, when you ask me the question, what is it that drives me? What drives me is solving the problem of checkout attrition in this case. And previously, when my information business, I was working in a library at an advertising agency, and getting data about this or that topic was a lot of legwork. You went from one library to another. You had to call people up and research reports. Being able to do that all online, when I realized that that was possible in the early 80s, I thought, well, I'm going to set up that company and do it. It was a folly at the time, because it took many, many years before it started to take off. And I'm seeing the same here. It's taken nearly 10 years for Rezolve to really start to take off, but it's taking off fast now.
Yeah, I want to point out something that you said that encapsulates sort of, again, this platform, and that is, you're starting with a business problem, right? So you're not that hammer looking for a nail. You have a business problem, and that remains the focus, right? And the technology is just an enabler to solve the business problem, right? That's the only way you can stay on something for, a decade, right? Is to say, until we solve this problem, we're not done. I'm interested in how you balance the bold innovation, right? Especially starting in 2016, when cloud was sort of still new, with the operational reality of being a large scale, retail service provider that is also traded publicly. So you've got, expectations in terms of your shareholders. How do you balance that bold innovation? How have you made it work?
It's not, I can't say it's easy. Look, I think that, the first of all, we weren't a public company until kind of recently, like a year ago. But during the period of being a private company, I didn't talk about AI because AI wasn't understood by investors, and they didn't. And if I had told them that we're building something that's going to take us years and cost us $130 million, which, by the way, in the context of what people are throwing at it today, peanuts, okay, nothing, but still a lot of money, okay, to develop and deploy that kind of capital over a long period of time with no revenue result, with in a market and a space that wasn't fully understood or appreciated, most investors would have run a mile. So it hasn't been an easy journey. I've been very fortunate to have some investors who back me because of my my career history and my success in the past, and I had my own money as well, thank God. But the combination of these things have allowed me to pursue this And now it's very gratifying to see how customers are taking it on. The market is developed around me to the point where people understand how this can be very beneficial for them. And of course, it's also interesting to watch the the madness, if you don't mind me saying, of what's going on around me in this space, in the space of AI generally, where huge sums of money are being thrown at, just as you say, products or services that have yet to have an actual end game, an actual solution. And I actually think a lot of the many billions of dollars is being thrown down a black hole of waste, because the propositions, in my view, for some of these initiatives, and I don't want to name them, but are just folly. They have no merit at all. I think that the future of AI it lies in solving problems very specifically, and it does that brilliantly. It can do that brilliantly if it's structured properly, if it's trained properly, if it's prevented from hallucinating, which is a problem with AI. Making mistakes and inventing things. We've solved those problems. We believe we solved those problems in the area of product catalogs and retail. But it has enormous potential in all areas of business and life.
Yeah, I'm interested in this. You mentioned hallucination, where the AI will make things up. We also have brands who are in the audience. Talk to us about how you get the technology to align to the brand voice, right? And to deliver on the customer promise, right? That you can actually train that into that trained salesperson. Now, it takes months and sometimes even years to get the highly trained sales folks. But so what's that process like?
So there's two things there. There's two questions in your question there, Vic. The first is around hallucinations and model drift. Now, in the case AI, many of your viewers will know, but for those who don't, AI is just predictive technologies. It's guessing the next word in a sentence and the next word in a sentence based upon everything that's ingested, and it continues to guess to create a paragraph and then to create another paragraph and to end up creating whatever it is it's creating. But it's all using mathematics and probabilistic algorithms to determine what the next word is and the next word. Now, by its nature, if you think about this, right, by its nature, if you're using probabilistic algorithms, your mathematics, to guess the next word in a sentence, then there is a small chance, although it's proving to be bigger and bigger each year, that it's going to get things wrong. And so that's the problem of hallucinations. That's what hallucinations is. It's when the guessing takes down a path that's not actually accurate, and it creates a result to a query that actually is untrue. And so what many providers are doing is they're creating what they call guardrails to prevent it from doing those things. Now, I don't believe in that. Controversially, I don't believe in that. And I believe, and we also knew right at the beginning of this in 2016, we knew back then that this would happen. We also knew that in the case of product catalogs, it's going to be much worse. Now, why is it worse with product catalogs? Well, I'll tell you why. If I'm a cosmetics retailer and I have a whole load of aftershaves and perfumes in my product catalog, they're going to have names like Beast and Churchill and other random names for aftershave, right? Savage. And then they're going to have descriptions like blackberries with sandalwood notes and barbecue, right? Or something like that, right? Now, Gen AI technology cannot distinguish between talking about blackberries and sandalwood and calling something beast, and the fact that that isn't an animal running in the woods eating blackberries, right? It can't distance itself to say, well, that's an aftershave. It doesn't work like that. So the propensity to hallucinate with products is much greater than with everything else in AI. And the reason for that is that product descriptions and the way in which we name products, clothing and all sorts of things, is kind of emotive. Okay. And because it's emotive, we haven't quite got there with technology, AI, Gen AI, to understand emotive and the ironic phrasing and things like that. It just doesn't get that yet. Okay. So in 2016, right at the forefront of this, we wanted to build preventative measures and processes around how we ingest product catalogs and how we structure it. And I think we've nailed it, and we've got a number of patents around it. And that's why I think Microsoft and Google partnered with us to sell this through, because they recognize that what we've done in this vertical, in this area of commerce and retail, is pretty advanced and clever. Okay. So that's that, putting that to one side. The question you had around how to train the salespeople, the best salespeople, and how to get the right tone of voice and so on, we don't have to do that ourselves. The customer can tell us. So, for example, if I'm dealing with Harrods, the famous department store in London, they would want to have a English Rose or an English guy with a certain way of speaking, and we can take that person and just have them read, an actual person, and have them read a book in a recording studio for an hour, and then that becomes the voice. It's very easy nowadays to do that. That's not stuff that we do. There's plenty of tools out there that will allow us to do that, to get the right tone of voice. And then you have the kind of flow, the respectful flow of that interaction with the consumer, which will be very different if I'm in Home Depot than if I'm in a high-end, Williams Sonoma, right? So it's going to be a different kind of interaction, but it's all manageable, and each iteration of it, as time goes on, that gets better and better and better. That's the beauty of this tech.
That's
fantastic.
And again, fascinating how you bring the various tools together to both, limit the complexity of what the AI has to deal with, and then also the training for the voice and actually, and perhaps it is you're a Brit. I think that the audience can tell. Maybe that's a translation. When I said brand voice, I sort of meant the tone of not the audio tone, but the how the brand wants to speak to the customer, right? So some brands are edgy, right? And they want, like you said, savage. They want to call things savages. If you want to be a savage, this is the fragrance for you, kind of thing. And others would not say anything like that, right? Harris would say this is a very refined thing. And is there something unique you do there, or
No,
are you pulling that from the catalog?
We take what we do that's unique is that we structure the data in a product catalog for AI interaction.
Okay.
And we allow the empathy and the sales process and the deep domain expertise. In terms of the finessing of the conversational finessing of style, we use public AI models, many of them that are out there, to finesse that, icing on the cake, because that stuff, we don't need to become experts in that, because that's already being managed very well. The concept of personas is out there and is being very well funded and very well developed. And so we just layer that on top. But what we have is this protection around hallucinations and process around conversation and empathy, which can be translated into the style of interaction, but it's the empathetic sales journey that we are experts in, which is, I don't know if when you've been to New York and you've been to one of those luggage stores on Fifth Avenue, this is one end of it, right? And you walk in, their whole thing is to getting you from the door into the store, preventing you from leaving. If you walk back towards the end, they try to sell you a watch. It's very clever the way that these guys work to sell luggage to you when you walk into one of those luggage stores. And it's been trained in decades, right, of sales training. And there's a lot of psychographics and stuff that comes out of taking a customer from a query to actually buying the product. I mean, there's all these different closes. There's the concept of, bringing it down to I'll give you an example, right, that we've trained our model on. So if I was to walk into a car dealer and I'm looking at one car and I'm looking at another car, and one car's $10,000 more expensive than the other car, and I'm like, I'm not sure, it's more expensive. one of the very famous sales techniques is bringing it down to the ridiculous, where you say the salesman should say in a situation like that. So what is it that you're concerned about the extra? Well, I don't really have $10,000. It's more expensive. They say, well, let me ask you a question. How long are you going to keep the car? Well, I'm going to keep the car 3 years. So that would be $3,300 a year, right? And how many days are there in the year? There's 365 days. So, that's going to cost you $3 a day, whatever it is, right? $30 a day. That's the price of a coffee at Starbucks and a donut every day. Is it worth a coffee and a donut to have this beautiful car? Right? These. I know that's a bit tacky, but the point is that you're taking the objections and you're converting them into a benefit. Is it worth the extra money? Yes, it's worth the extra money. If that's all it's going to be on a daily basis. And then you've got this lovely car. And so those you have to train, right? You can't, that doesn't come naturally. That's a trained sales process. And so what we've done with our language model is focus on that, because ultimately what we want is when somebody arrives at the site, your e-commerce site. And remember, it's cost a lot of money to get that person to the site. There's Amazon out there that's getting 50 cents on the dollar for everybody online, right? So you've got somebody in the other 50 cents who arrive at your site. They've got to you because you paid for, Instagram ads or TikTok or Google ads or whatever, or Bing ads or whatever it is, right? You've got the customer to the site. They're at your site. You don't want to lose 7 of them out of 10. You don't want to lose 7 of them after all that. So our job is to make sure that that person arrives at the site, we can help them. They've come for a reason. They've come because they're interested in a product. They've come because they're interested in buying something, maybe. You just need to take that person from arriving to the checkout. And that's our job. That's what we do at Rezolve AI. We're focused only on that.
Interesting. I'm a store guy, Dan. So, when we met, I was talking stores, you were talking commerce. And I wonder, do you anticipate reshaping the frontline experience in stores over the next 12 to 18 months? How will this technology sort of make its way into the physical environment, or will it? Would you anticipate, that more commerce will move online? You'll get higher turnover and then just even more and more commerce, to the web.
No, I think that there is already digital support for salespeople in physical stores. Many salespeople walk around with a tablet or a mobile phone where they have access to inventory and other store data. And often you would go to a store and there isn't a salesperson around because it's a big store and people are doing it serving other customers and so on. So if you take the example of having a tablet on a display, and I can just say, I'm looking at these sweaters. Can you tell me a bit more about them? And it can tell me about them. Then I don't, and I can, and it can tell me about them in Korean or in Chinese or in whatever. Then that's an enhancement of the physical store experience. Another example would be you're in a big car lot, using cars again. You're in a big car lot. Often we've all been there, where you're in a car lot and there's no sales guy to be seen, right? Because there's 3 salespeople in this 5,000 cars, But being able to walk around the car, there's a tablet there telling me about everything. The engine, the accessories, I'm having that conversation with a tablet that's next to the car. I don't need a salesman until I want to make the purchase, right? Until I want to actually take it for a test drive or whatever. So there are lots and lots of situations in physical retail. And we actually do some stuff with Dunkin' Donuts, for example, where we improve the drive-through experience and, where you can have conversations with the drive-through in your own language, and you won't make a mistake, because at the moment the language barrier creates a large amount of error at the pickup counter, because I've ordered something and I didn't quite get it right. When I get there, it's not quite the right thing, slowing down the whole process. Whereas we've been able to improve that by 5 minutes in the drive-through process. So there are many scenarios in the physical world where our technology can improve engagement with customers.
Yeah, I guess many of us experience it today. If you've been to a museum, high-end museum these days, you can buy the little the walkthrough, right? And it's,
and that's a great example.
the next step is to be able to talk to it. Tell me about this picture. It knows where you are, proximity. Perhaps it has video, that sort of thing.
Well,
And
it's going
so
to have a lot more data. It's going to have a lot more data than they will have put into the sort of talk through, because at the moment it's one-way traffic, right? You're walking around, it's telling you, but if I'm able to say, hey, I don't want to hear all the other stuff, but now I'm standing in front of a certain painting, I said, look, and it will know where I am because of geo. Um, I'm standing in front of this painting, tell me about it. And it will tell me about it. And then I can ask the question, well, did this artist do anything else? Like, yes, there's another painting over there. I can actually get into a proper conversation. And remember, the language model, the technology that we provide can be extremely knowledgeable on anything in that museum. It's a very good use case, actually, that you
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah.
Is a good one.
It's much more sort of interactive than the docent who walks around or stands around. You can maybe ask them a question. So where, you mentioned Duncan, where can the audience experience whether, your tech or who do you think's doing it well? How could we sort of experience this and get the sense of what conversational AI in commerce looks like today?
Well, so I think that at the moment we've only really started rolling out this year, so it's a bit early days on it being in the front end. We're in many live pilots, and we're in many A/B testing environments where you might go to a site and you're not sure whether it'll immediately push it up to you or not. But we have over 50 enterprise retailers now deploying the technologies in the first half of this year, including people like Ace Hardware and Liverpool in Mexico and RS Components and Crate and Barrel and many others. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of this over the next 6 months appearing on these sites. And I think it is the next generation of interaction with digital platforms, because I don't think the old way, which I said at the beginning was end of life, I genuinely think it's finished. I think
Yeah.
we're talking about the horse and cart and the Model T Ford. There is we're going through that change, and it's not going to be long before there are no more horse and carts and everyone's in a car, because the old way of doing things is not fit for purpose anymore.
Yeah.
It was good 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, it was good, but not anymore.
You mentioned Liverpool, and it reminded me of Nordstrom and Liverpool have a new partnership or joint venture or something. And I've recently got introduced to their personal shopping process, right? Where you get a shopper to sort of shop with you. They can either shop
Yes.
for you ahead of time. And, I wonder if that would be amazing, right? I remember walking through the store and I had the personal shopper, and the amount of time that this person saved me by saying, I said, so what about this table here? He said, oh no, you don't want that. Right. So based on the criteria that you told me that you're looking for, that's not you. Right.
Yes.
If you've got, larger thighs or something like that, you don't want those pants. They run a little. And so that level of expertise really streamlined. So now instead of looking at 27 pairs of pants, literally 27 pairs of pants, there's three that I need to choose from.
Well, but isn't that what happens today in a physical store versus a digital store, right? You go into a physical store and you say, hey, I need a pair of pants. I've got a wedding to go to. I'd like a blue or black colored pants, not too heavy because it's in the summer. What do you get? The salesperson is going to go and bring you 3 or 4 pairs.
Yes.
If you do that online, you do that on, not that you could say that in one sentence, but if you did it, men's apparel,
Oh,
trousers, you'd end up with 187 pairs of trousers, many of them completely inappropriate for what you're looking for, on pages where they're like 40 items a page.
yes.
Scroll through. This is not, it's fine. We're all used to it. And we've been trained to interact in that way. And I've been partly responsible for that training because, my company was providing those platforms, 20 years ago. But the point is that's that was fine, but that's no longer the way it should be. The way it should be going forward is the new way, and the new way is a better way. It's a more appropriate way. And I can tell you this: if I had the choice of going to retailer A, B, or C, and retailer A and B didn't have conversational commerce, but retailer C did, I'd always go to C.
I
Always.
think I
Why
would
would
as
I go?
well.
Yeah. Why would you go to the old way of doing things
I
when,
think I would as well.
unless there was something unique there that you can't get anywhere else? I mean, but if you were going to 3 different department stores, you go to the one that allowed you to have a conversation and get the answers to things and probe it and get more data, because that's how we end up making those purchase decisions with our hard-earned cash.
Yes. That's Dan, thank you for being with us today. I do have one more question for you, and I'll go ahead and state it while you think about it. But I'm interested in what's one myth or a general myth in for AI and retail that you'd like to sort of dispel or bust the myth. And so I'll remind the audience that you're on the leading edge of this transformation. We've had conversational commerce. I know we at Microsoft have worked with a few retailers to build it in. It's fairly a limited use case, and so opening it up to a full commerce experience and having the AI guide you like a trained salesperson would is something that I think we're all looking for. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just the technologists in the crowd who want that. But so I'll turn it over to you and say, what's
Yeah.
one myth about AI in retail that you'd like to sort of help us get over?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that conversational commerce is not a myth. I think conversational commerce is going to be replacing the way we interact today because it's better. It's just simply better. It's going to be more knowledgeable, better, and you can do it in any language, right? So that is a better experience and will replace everything on every platform, every digital platform. One of the things I do think I'm very skeptical of, and this is a little bit controversial, given your introduction. Okay, I hope you don't mind. Maybe you invited me on because I am controversial. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I think the agentic commerce proposition is the limited use case, because I don't think people want. I mean, if I have an agent that reorders my milk, if I regularly refill my fridge with milk, okay, then I'm kind of okay with that, I think. Okay. But I don't want agents going out to buy stuff for me. I don't want them buying my trousers. I don't want them replacing my trainers. I don't want that stuff. I want to go and find that out myself, but I want to do it easier than I'm doing it now.
Sure.
I want to do it more conveniently. So I have a view about the agentic commerce, which is that I think that is more of a you know, uh, it's more of a unique set of use cases. I do think it has relevance in restocking things, but I don't think it has a use case in buying things. When I would say buying, shopping. Okay, let's call it shopping.
Shopping.
Shopping is different. I want to buy a new phone. I want to buy a new pair of trousers. I want to go get a new pair of trainers. I want to buy some tickets for the movie house. Whatever it is, those sort of things. There's no way an agent's going to do that for me. There's no way I'm having an agent do it. An agent might go and find out what's out and tell me, but that's what we're doing. That's what I would call conversational commerce. I ask a question: what's showing at the movie house today? That's a thriller. That's a this, or what's a comedy, or what's that's a different thing. That's conversational commerce. But something that goes off and does it for me and spends money on my card, no, thank you.
No, thank you. It's I might put that in the same category as self-driving cars. Maybe someday, right? But
Well, I went in one. I went in one in San Francisco or Los Angeles, actually. Self-driving taxi. It was amazing, but kind of weird, but amazing. I think that as long as it stopped at the lights and did all that. I don't know if you've been in one. It's kind of amazing. So I kind of see that as becoming something. Why not? If it's better technically, because I mean we get in airplanes that are self-flying. I think we all know that, right? So if you're prepared to get in a plane, you should be fine with a car. But agentic buying things and using my money to buy stuff that I may or may not want, that I haven't even vetted, no thank you.
Yeah, you don't want your agent getting quote sold a bill of goods
I definitely don't want that.
All right. Well, thank you again, Dan, for spending time with us. We ought to check back in with you and see how the launches are going, and I look forward to seeing this conversational commerce capability in retail experiences near me.
Thank you. It'll be a pleasure. I look forward to it.
My pleasure. All right, that is the wrap up of another episode of Beyond the Tech. Thank you, audience. Do put comments in the video to let us know. Do you like this format? I thought you're right, Dan. I invited you because I didn't want to constrain you. I didn't figure you could be constrained. You have a very unique perspective, and so again, thank you, and we'll see you out in market.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Cheers.